Hello everyone, and welcome to my Bold and Beautiful Gossips 24 channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. The news hit like a thunderclap across the Forrester family, reverberating through every corner of Los Angeles and leaving everyone, friends, family, and rivals alike, in stunned silence. Eric Forrester, patriarch of the Forrester dynasty and the living embodiment of the fashion empire that bore his name, had quietly executed one of the most shocking moves in recent memory. In a revelation that no one saw coming, documents obtained by insiders revealed that Eric had transferred a substantial portion of his personal assets and shares of Forrester Creations, not to his children, not even to the ones who had spent decades by his side in both love and business, but to one of his stepchildren, a figure whose identity would ignite gossip, speculation, and outright chaos. For years, the Forrester household had seemed a picture of controlled elegance, a family where business and personal drama often collided but never in ways so cataclysmically disruptive. Yet now the revelation threatened to upend the delicate balance that Eric had so carefully maintained. The stepchild in question, a figure who had lived largely in the shadows of the family's spotlight yet had consistently shown an uncanny talent for maneuvering the intricate dance of Forrester politics, suddenly found themselves catapulted into a position of power and influence that rivaled even Ridge and Thorne in terms of sheer significance. The initial reactions were electric. Ridge Forrester, who had spent decades striving to maintain both his father's approval and his own place in the empire, was rendered speechless when confronted with the news. The lines of loyalty he had assumed were unbreakable seemed to blur overnight, leaving him wrestling with disbelief, frustration, and a creeping sense of betrayal. Meanwhile, Steffi and Phoebe, who had spent countless hours negotiating the corporate landscape of Forrester Creations and protecting their own stakes, could hardly fathom the implications. What did this mean for their own futures? For their ability to influence decisions that had been their birthright for decades? For the intricate alliances and rivalries that had defined their family dynamic? Even Brooke, whose own history with Eric had been a complex web of love, loyalty, and conflict, could scarcely contain her shock, her mind racing with every possible scenario. How would this affect the boardroom? The upcoming fashion lines? The legacy of the Forrester name itself? As the revelation began to ripple outward, the media caught wind, and soon the story was everywhere, dominating headlines and social media feeds alike. Analysts, insiders, and gossip columnists debated endlessly, speculating on Eric's motives. Some whispered of a hidden affection or acknowledgement of merit that had long been ignored. Others suggested a final act of control, a way for Eric to dictate the future of Forrester Creations even from beyond the grave. Within the walls of the family estate, the atmosphere was tense, heavy with unspoken words and glances that carried the weight of decades of rivalry and resentment. Conversations that once revolved around mundane matters, weekly board meetings, design decisions, or family celebrations, suddenly shifted, everyone gauging each other for clues, alliances, and unvoiced reactions. There was a distinct sense that history was being rewritten in real time, with Eric's decision acting as a catalyst for both introspection and confrontation. The stepchild, caught in the whirlwind of newfound authority, oscillated between triumph and terror, understanding that with great power came immediate scrutiny and inevitable resentment. Trust, already a fragile commodity in the Forrester family, now seemed more precarious than ever, as old wounds were reopened and new ones threatened to form. Among the younger generation, whispered discussions erupted, secret meetings, hushed phone calls, and furtive exchanges in hallways, each attempt to decode the implications of Eric's decision, to predict the next move, and to stake out personal positions in a shifting landscape where yesterday's assumptions no longer held true. Meanwhile, the business side of the revelation unfolded with equal intensity. Stock values, board votes, and design approvals became not just corporate necessities but emotional battlegrounds where loyalty, ambition, and familial bonds collided with unpredictable force. Ridge, ever the loyal son, confronted the stepchild directly, the two of them locked in a tense standoff, words sharp and measured, neither willing to yield ground, both aware that the balance of power had fundamentally changed. Ridge's internal struggle was palpable. He questioned his own identity within the family, the worthiness of his own contributions, and the fairness of a patriarchal decision that seemed to defy not just expectation but generational entitlement. Meanwhile, Thorne and Katie watched from the sidelines, processing the implications through their own lenses of experience, history, and personal ambition, each realizing that the new reality required a recalibration of strategies, alliances, and even personal relationships. Outside the walls of Forrester Creations, the world seemed equally captivated, as clients, investors, and competitors alike speculated on how this unprecedented transfer would influence the fashion empire's trajectory. The combination of personal and professional upheaval created a ripple effect that touched every facet of the Forrester legacy, leaving no one untouched. Yet amid the shock, whispers of understanding began to emerge. Some recognized that Eric, despite his age and the many battles he had fought, had always been guided by a vision beyond the immediate, a desire to shape the future of his family in ways only he could comprehend. Could this move, radical and controversial as it seemed, represent a final act of foresight? A calculated decision to secure the family name in unexpected hands, to reward hidden loyalty, or to correct perceived injustices long buried. Conversations over champagne in the grand halls of Forrester Creations and hushed talks in private offices unfolded in a delicate dance, each person navigating the complex maze of emotion, ambition, and legacy that Eric's decision had suddenly thrown into disarray. Alliances shifted almost overnight. Former adversaries found common ground, while long-trusted confidants re-evaluated their positions, unsure of where true loyalty now resided. The social repercussions within the elite circles of Los Angeles's fashion and philanthropic communities were equally profound, as patrons, competitors, and friends scrambled to understand, interpret, and respond to a move that seemed to redefine the rules of the game. Through it all, Eric's presence, though absent physically in terms of daily intervention, loomed large, a reminder of the indelible mark one individual could leave on both a family and an empire. As the weeks unfolded, tension gave way to confrontation, strategy sessions became psychological chess matches, and the stepchild, once in the background, now found themselves navigating a labyrinth of expectation, skepticism, and ambition, each interaction colored by the shadow of Eric's decision. Secrets long buried, grudges held in check, and alliances forged in the heat of crisis all came to the surface, creating an intricate web of drama that was as unpredictable as it was riveting. Each family member grappled with their place in this new order, reassessing relationships, ambitions, and even their own sense of identity in light of a decision that had, in an instant, changed everything. And as the dust settled, though only temporarily, one thing remained certain. Eric Forrester had orchestrated a move that would resonate for generations, a final testament to a life lived with both passion and precision, leaving behind a legacy that was, as always, as complicated, dramatic, and powerful as the man himself, ensuring that the story of the Forresters would continue to captivate, shock, and enthrall anyone who dared to follow their turbulent, magnificent saga. As the news of Eric Forrester's unprecedented decision reverberated throughout the family, the shockwaves extended far beyond the initial revelation. Whispers in the hallways of Forrester Creations turned into hushed debates, and hushed debates soon became heated confrontations, as each family member grappled with the reality that the patriarch had, in essence, rewritten the hierarchy of the Forrester empire. Ridge, long considered Eric's favored son in matters of business and family legacy, felt a surge of disbelief that morphed quickly into a maelstrom of anger and confusion. He paced the corridors of the mansion, recalling every moment he had spent building his career under his father's watchful eye, questioning how years of loyalty, dedication, and sacrifices could seemingly be disregarded in favor of a stepchild who had been quietly maneuvering in the background for decades. Every glance exchanged with the newly empowered stepchild became a chess move, loaded with silent calculation, unspoken resentment, and the unrelenting desire to reclaim what Ridge felt was rightfully his. Even Thorne, usually more reserved and contemplative, found himself swept into the fray, his own ambitions and insecurities amplified by the tectonic shifts in family power. As he observed Ridge, Steffi, and the stepchild negotiating the new reality, Thorne could not help but consider his own position, wondering whether his influence had been diminished or if opportunities now lay hidden in the chaos that Eric had so deliberately orchestrated. The siblings, Steffi, Phoebe, and Thomas, were each caught in their own personal storms. Steffi, known for her razor-sharp business acumen and ability to navigate the treacherous waters of Forrester politics, felt a rare moment of vulnerability, unsure how to approach the boardroom meetings that had suddenly become arenas of tension, mistrust, and high-stakes maneuvering. Phoebe, younger and less experienced, struggled to reconcile the family she thought she knew with the reality that Eric had made a decision none of them could have anticipated. She questioned her own understanding of loyalty, merit, and familial bonds, realizing that the definitions she had taken for granted were now fluid, mutable, and subject to the patriarch's final judgment. Even Thomas, who had often been seen as the black sheep or the wild card of the family, sensed the subtle yet powerful shift in alliances. He observed the dynamics carefully, calculating his next steps, knowing that with the stepchild's rise to prominence, old rivalries would flare, and opportunities for influence could either be seized or lost forever. Outside the intimate confines of the family estate, the news spread like wildfire. The Los Angeles fashion elite, industry insiders, and media outlets devoured every detail, speculating endlessly on Eric's motives. Analysts debated whether this was an act of reward for years of behind-the-scenes loyalty, a strategic move to protect the family business from internal conflict, or perhaps a subtle message to the next generation that Eric's vision extended beyond conventional norms of inheritance. Each theory generated further intrigue, as the story became not just a familial revelation but a cultural event, captivating audiences who had followed the Forresters' drama for decades. Within the mansion itself, the atmosphere was electric with tension. Conversations that had once been mundane, a discussion about a new clothing line, a design critique, or a simple family dinner, were now laden with underlying currents of suspicion, unspoken challenge, and carefully measured diplomacy. Every interaction was a negotiation, every word a potential weapon or shield, as the family navigated the complex emotional and corporate fallout from Eric's decision. The stepchild, who had previously existed largely in the shadows, now found themselves thrust into an arena of both reverence and resentment. The initial shock had faded just enough for the reality of responsibility to sink in. Overseeing a portion of Eric's vast assets and wielding influence in Forrester Creations was not merely a symbolic gesture. It was a mandate laden with expectations, obligations, and the ever-present scrutiny of a family accustomed to both loyalty and intrigue. The newfound power was intoxicating, yet heavy with the burden of living up to Eric's trust, while navigating the volatile dynamics that had long defined the Forrester household. Ridge, however, could not simply accept the new hierarchy. He confronted the stepchild directly in the opulent expanse of the Forrester mansion, the two standing face to face, each measuring the other with a mix of strategy, suspicion, and suppressed emotion. Words were exchanged carefully, calculatedly, as Ridge tried to assert the authority and experience he felt entitled to, while the stepchild responded with quiet confidence, mindful that Eric's decision was both shield and sword in their favor. Every conversation became a high-stakes negotiation, with unspoken consequences hanging in the air, threatening to unravel relationships long thought solid. Steffi, observing from the periphery, felt an internal conflict that mirrored the external drama. She had always prided herself on loyalty, family, and business savvy, yet she now faced the reality that the patriarch's judgment could override even the most carefully constructed strategies. Her mind raced with possibilities, considering alliances, potential compromises, and strategies for preserving influence while navigating an environment where trust had become an exceptionally scarce commodity. Phoebe, meanwhile, found herself caught between admiration and resentment, unsure how to approach a family dynamic that had suddenly shifted in ways she could hardly process. Her every interaction was cautious, her instincts telling her to seek alignment, while her emotions wrestled with the feeling that the rules of engagement had changed overnight. Even minor decisions, what to wear for a meeting, how to respond in conversation, where to position oneself during family gatherings, became laden with significance, as each choice could be interpreted as support, dissent, or strategic maneuvering. Beyond the family, Forrester Creations itself became a microcosm of the larger drama. Employees, designers, and executives watched closely as the ripple effects of Eric's decision spread through the organization. Board meetings, once straightforward discussions of fabric, marketing, and design, transformed into arenas of tension, negotiation, and subtle power plays. Every presentation was scrutinized, every suggestion weighed against the backdrop of shifting influence, as stakeholders sought to anticipate the impact of the stepchild's newfound authority. Investors, equally captivated, debated the implications for corporate stability, long-term growth, and brand identity. The fashion world, always a stage for both creativity and competition, responded in kind. Clients, competitors and industry insiders speculated on whether Forrester creations would emerge stronger, or whether the internal realignment might threaten the very legacy Eric had spent decades cultivating. Meanwhile, personal relationships within the family reached new heights of complexity. Ridge, Steffi, Thorne, and Thomas grappled not only with business strategy but with emotional fallout. Questions of loyalty, perceived favoritism, and personal validation became intertwined with professional responsibilities. Even Brooke, whose own history with Eric had been a tapestry of love, conflict, and negotiation, found herself navigating a maze of emotions, torn between pride, curiosity, and a lingering sense of incredulity. As the days turned into weeks, the drama intensified. The stepchild, once a peripheral figure, now commanded attention, respect, and scrutiny in equal measure. Conversations that once centered on fashion became psychological contests, testing patience, strategy, and resolve. Alliances shifted unpredictably, grudges long held in check resurfaced, and even those who had thought themselves secure in their positions found their influence subject to challenge. Each interaction was a delicate balancing act, with the weight of legacy, expectation, and personal ambition pressing down on every decision. Eric's choice, though singular, acted as a catalyst, exposing vulnerabilities, igniting passions, and forcing each family member to confront not only their relationships with each other, but their own identities, ambitions, and values. Every boardroom discussion, every family dinner, every private conversation became a test of wit, loyalty, and emotional resilience, as the Forresters navigated a landscape reshaped by one man's final unprecedented decision. In the midst of the chaos, subtle moments of insight and reflection emerged. Ridge, despite his frustration, recognized the necessity of adaptation, realizing that influence was not solely determined by inheritance, but by the ability to navigate change, anticipate moves, and leverage both experience and intellect. Steffi discovered a renewed sense of determination, understanding that her voice, vision, and judgment remained critical, even in a reorganized hierarchy. Phoebe, absorbing lessons in both humility and strategy, began to recognize that survival in the Forrester world required not just talent but acute perception, emotional intelligence, and strategic foresight. And the stepchild, navigating their newfound prominence, learned quickly that power was as isolating as it was empowering, requiring a delicate balance of confidence, tact, and awareness of both opportunity and vulnerability. Through it all, Eric's presence, whether literal or symbolic, remained a guiding force. His decision, radical as it seemed, underscored the complexity of his understanding of family, loyalty, and legacy. It was a reminder that influence, foresight, and authority could extend beyond conventional boundaries, reshaping both personal and professional landscapes in ways that would resonate for generations. The repercussions were multifaceted, affecting not just inheritance and corporate strategy, but social relationships, personal identity, and the intricate web of alliances, rivalries, and unspoken agreements that define the Forrester family. As the drama unfolded, suspense became intertwined with strategy, and the boundaries between personal emotion and professional obligation blurred, creating a rich tapestry of tension, ambition, and intrigue. Every glance, every whispered conversation, every strategic move was loaded with meaning, as the family, and indeed the world around them, struggled to reconcile the reality of Eric's unprecedented act with the expectations, ambitions, and histories that had defined the Forrester legacy for decades. As the days stretched on, tension within the Forrester household escalated to almost unbearable levels. Family gatherings, once warm and filled with laughter, became powder kegs of suppressed anger, suspicion, and unspoken accusations. Ridge, unable to let go of his sense of entitlement, found himself scrutinizing every decision made by the stepchild, searching for missteps that could justify reclaiming his perceived rightful authority. Steffi, meanwhile, balanced the fine line between maintaining her own influence and navigating a fragile relationship with her newly empowered sibling, each interaction loaded with calculated gestures and subtle power plays. Thorne observed silently, his thoughts a labyrinth of ambition, doubt, and strategy, aware that patience might offer him leverage in the long term. Even Brooke, caught between familial loyalty and personal intuition, struggled to process the shifting dynamics, questioning whether Eric's choice was an act of brilliance, a test, or a final assertion of control over a family that never ceased to challenge him. Outside the mansion, whispers grew louder, Industry insiders speculated endlessly, and the media fanned the flames, turning what was once private family drama into a citywide sensation. Every interaction now carried stakes far beyond the personal. Each decision could influence the empire Eric had built, alter legacies, and forever reshape the Forrester family's future.